Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. Now that we have Week 12 kicked off with Thursday Night Football, we're going to look into the Sunday day games one by one. So if this is not the pregame of the two teams that you're looking for, go look for the other video that should be on the channel. But otherwise, let's get into this one. Getting into another divisional game, which is usually a pretty exciting one for the NFC East, is Philadelphia going to Dallas, where Philadelphia is favored on the money line with a spread of 3 points and a total line of 47.5. There's your team's seasonal averages. And then looking at their rankings, you have Philly about middle of the road here, their worst ranking being 29 in the passing rank. So they're fourth worst in the league right here. Otherwise, they're about average for their rushing rank and about average for their scoring rank. So a little below average offense here. Defense, they're a little closer to average with an allowed passing rank of 15, allowed rushing rank of 19. That's a little below average. But they're much better at defending against tight ends, much better than they are against the pass in general. And they're also really good at stopping their opponents from scoring. For Dallas, you have a different story where they have a very good offense for the most part. They're best in the league at passing, second best at scoring for themselves, about average, a little above average for rushing, and they're not great at using their tight ends. However, defensively, they're almost one of the worst teams in the league with an allowed scoring rank of 31, allowed passing rank of 31, so second worst in the league at stopping the pass and at stopping their opponents from scoring, allowed rushing rank of 24, and then an allowed tight end rank of 23. And then getting into our quarterbacks with Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. Hurts averaging 20 fantasy points per game, and Prescott right behind him at 19.3. Hurts has had one interception this season, and one fumble lost due to a sack, as well as one additional rushing fumble. And Dak Prescott has had 6 interceptions this season, with one fumble lost due to a sack. And then switching over to their seasonal averages and their rushing carry share, where you have 24.9% of the team's rushing carry share going to Jalen Hurts, and 22.1% of the team's rushing yard share going to them. That comes off of 7.3 average carries per game and 26.5 average rushing yards per game. For Dak Prescott, we can't see it, but we can with the running backs next. However, we can kind of guess right now, and that's probably about 12 to 15% here for that rushing carry share, and it looks to be a little less here for that rushing yard share, maybe closer to 10%. Next up for the running backs, you have Saquon Barkley and Javonte Williams, with Barkley averaging 15.1 fantasy points per game and Williams averaging 16.6. The only turnovers come from Williams, with one rushing fumble and one receiving fumble this season. And then there's our player averages for the season. And we look at their carry share, with Saquon getting about 59.7% of the team's rushing carry share and 55.2% of the team's rushing yard share. And of course, I think the largest majority of that is taken up by Hurts. That's taking it away from Barkley, because the backups don't take very much here. With Williams, he gets about 68.2% of the team's rushing carry share and 73% of the team's rushing yard share, and so he also doesn't share very much with the rest of the team. Moving towards our receivers, we have A.J. Brown and C.D. Lamb as our number one receivers. Brown averaging 11.3 fantasy points per game, and C.D. Lamb averaging just under 18, with no turnovers between the two. We'll just move to their averages and look at the target share at 28% of the team's target share for A.J. Brown, and 24% of the team's receiving yard share. That doesn't quite make him the most targeted and largest receiver on the team, maybe about second. And then we'll see who gets that largest portion soon. With CeeDee Lamb, he gets about 17.9% of the team's target share, 21.6% of the team's receiving yard share. That is also not quite the largest on his team, but he also missed several weeks in here, so he has some making up to do in order to get these numbers larger, which they have been growing over time. And then getting into the number two receivers with Devontae Smith and George Pickens. Smith averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game and Pickens averaging 19.1. Neither of them have given up any turnovers this season, so there's their averages. And their target share with Devontae Smith getting 28.9% of the team's target share and 35.4% of the team's receiving yard share. And that does make him the largest of anybody on the team. Some of that is because A.J. Brown was out maybe for a week or two, so he's still trying to catch up to that. But they do seem to like to utilize those two receivers over everybody else. With George Pickens, you actually have a similar story with a target share of 24.4% and 35.2% of the team's receiving yards. That does make him the most favored receiver this season, but that's also due to CeeDee Lamb being out for a good portion of this season. And then, of course, wrapping up with our tight ends, you have Dallas Goedert and Jake Ferguson, with Goddard averaging 12.6 fantasy points per game and Ferguson averaging 14. The only turnovers come from Ferguson with one receiving fumble. So let's look at their averages for the season and their target share, with Goddard getting about 21.5% of the team's target share and 18.9% of the team's receiving yard share. That makes him about the third largest receiver on the team. For Jake Ferguson, you get about 20.9% of the team's target share and 15.5% of the team's receiving yard share. And that too makes him about the third largest receiver on the Cowboys. So this game could be a real shootout. It really just depends how it goes down. But you have Dallas with this much better offense that seems like they should be able to score on Philly's defense much easier. However, even with this average offense from Philadelphia, they're going against about the worst defense in the league. So, in order for Dallas to win, they just need to keep scoring and have it be a shootout, which is why Philly's probably favored on the money line. And I can see how that would be with some decent offensive ranking against this terrible defense, but you never know, and especially at home with Dallas, who maybe are hyped up for this game, you could see Dallas winning this too, so it could go either way in my mind, and we'll just have to see how it turns out. And there's all your data for that matchup. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what else you might want to see in the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.